goal tonight was we wanted to hopefully get some local folks here to tell us some stories here from the area, or if you're from out of state and you have a story from out of state, that's fine too. But usually it's hard to get the first person. You know, you got to get that first person up to talk about it. So who's going to be that first guinea pig? Somebody's going to get up, I know. All right.
I'm originally from New Jersey. I moved down here 6 years ago. I was made by Bigfoot. I moved down here to Marion in a mobile home right next to Humble Woods, and also surrounded by horse fields. I was clicking channels, came up on Finding Bigfoot, the show, and said, oh, this ought to be funny. But that was after I had already been having activity around my house that I couldn't explain. When I started watching that show, they started talking about things that I was experiencing. And I started thinking like, whoa, okay, that's weird. We were having rocks thrown at our house at 2 a.m. in the morning. Again, we have no neighbors. It was there was horse fields and then woods, that's it. And our garage shed, our little shed was broken into. I pulled up late at night, and the way I park shines into the woods. Lit up the woods here, but there was eyes glowing over here at the edge of where the woods are. They used to say I went to open my door and shut it right away, and stood there and waited until the eyes turned away and disappeared, and I ran into the house. They were very large, glowing eyes. I couldn't tell exactly how tall because the area slopes and it was nighttime. I couldn't tell where exactly the line is there. Another time I left my house to go out to my car. It was at night, and I thought the sewer had backed up or something. It stunk bad, and so I continued out to my car to do what I was going to do. On my way back, we did have one neighbor next to us. It was an older couple, and the gentleman has very long hair, full mustache, beard, and they have a pickup truck. And here I thought he was standing behind the pickup truck. And I had commented to him. Now, this person, anytime you say hi to him, it turns into a 2-hour conversation. So I hollered to him. I says, well, I'm going to have to get Ron to take a look at the sewer. It's really smelling bad out here. Nothing. And he kept doing this. The bed of the car was here, and he kept doing this. And I'm looking, and again, it was dark. There was one spotlight that kind of lit up part of the parking area, but you couldn't really see well. And I just kept looking. I just kept talking to him like it was my neighbor. 2 nights later, my daughter at the time was 8. I just put her to bed, walked out into the living room, was watching TV, and she started calling for me and said, Mommy, there's a hairy man looking in my window. She had her shade up. So, of course, again, at this point, I still didn't believe yet until I started watching these shows and saying, wow, I had that. I had a rock thrown at me during the day. Then I finally had a sighting during the day. Along the fence line of the horses, where the trees are there. I was outside with my dogs. The funny thing is my dogs didn't seem to sense it. Earlier I've had them barking at the woods. You couldn't find what they were barking at, going absolutely berserk. This time they were laid back. And I actually saw it walk through the whole. At first I wasn't sure what it was. I thought it was a very large built man, all in black. I was out there in a short sleeve shirt. It looked like it was wearing one of those Stay Puft Marshmallow jackets, you know what I'm talking about? All black, gloves on, black gloves. I'm just like, okay, well that was weird. Looked like it was wearing a hoodie that had, everybody ever see the hoodies that have the hair sticking out that the teenagers used to wear? Or am I dating myself? and I never could see the face. It was always in an angle as it was walking. I'd only get this part of the head. And as it started walking away, I realized as it stepped, the back of the feet, I could see they were like a grayish, it was a lighter color than anything else. Never saw any other color on the hands but black. And I said to myself, wow, that's pretty weird, someone be dressed up like an ape walking through the woods. It was shortly after that sighting when I started watching the show and started saying, wow, this happened, the smell, the rocks being thrown at me, the bottom of the feet being a lighter color. That's all I saw, everything was black. But as the feet lifted up, you could see that the lighter color at the bottom of the feet, as if they were wearing like a Converse sneakers or something. But when the light shone on it, you could see the shimmering on the arms and the muscles. And I was just like, wow, okay. I've since moved from that area, not because of that. We actually were renting that area and we bought property. I'm in Atkins now, and now the woods that are around me in Atkins, I have had action over there. I walk through the woods, there's structures. There's only about 5 acres of woods. There are structures everywhere, very complex ones. There is one tree that was down and hoisted up in the air, wedged between 2 trees that crisscrossed, wedged through here and wedged through there, as if it was a post, but it was, I mean, very large sized trees. And there was no way any equipment could get in there to lift that up there because the wood's just too heavy. I did find a footprint. I photographed it, but I didn't have anything to measure it with. It was a smaller footprint, but it was in the fall where I was wearing the jacket, and you could see every single toe. I actually caught it only because it had rained the night before and the water runs down our property and through the woods, and it was the next day and I came and the water had seeped, but it was all muddy, and just one print, that's all I got. I'm trying to think all the other things. It's just, I've had, you know, just the feeling of being watched and things like that when I'm out in my yard. We had a scream in the middle of the night that everybody keeps telling me it was a screech out. I'm like, no, I never screech out sounds like that. It was not. It sounded like a woman being murdered. That's all I can say. It wasn't the scariest sound I ever heard. We've also heard in the middle of the night giggle sounds, like children playing in the woods in the middle of the night. I probably have more instances. It's commonplace for me now. I don't even think about it. I don't write it. I started writing it down a little bit, but it just became so regular for me. I stopped writing it down. So that's my story.
This was an artist. They stayed at home and drew all the check. So 4:30, I picked the guy up. We're coming back down the ridge. We get almost to the end of the ridge. I'm driving a 2003 Jeep Wrangler, same one I brush bust with and saved Tommy there. But I come back down the ridge, and I saw something stand up that started out into the road, and I had to jack the brakes up to stop the vehicle. So I stopped probably 3 feet or less from it, and it walked out in front of my vehicle and across the road and down over the hill. And when it walked out from in front of the road, there was the thing that I was scared of when I was 12 years old. It was probably 3 to 4 feet taller than the roof of the Jeep. And roughly it's probably about that broad. The only way I could describe it is the Incredible Hulk of hair. It was huge. It wasn't a bear. It wasn't a deer. It's nothing I'd ever seen before. It was covered from head to toe with a reddish brown hair. Around its arms, underneath its arms, around its armpits, the hair was rolled up like dreadlocks. And the only thing I could think of is from arm swing. But this, you know, little road you guys drove up here, some of you guys probably first experienced on a small country road like that. I grew up on those roads. That thing crossed the road 3 steps and was gone down the hill. When a bear stands up and walks, it wobbles from side to side. Its hips aren't made for bipedal movement. This was smooth, fluid, and it was huge. I've had some other encounters with Billy and Bruce. We found some footprints up in eastern Virginia, screams. I don't know, do they still have that one scream? Melissa and him had,
Probably.
that was probably one of the most terrifying screams I ever heard in my life. When I heard it, we were all sitting around a fire. It was 10, 11 o'clock at night. And when it screamed, I stuck my hand in my pocket and cocked the pistol. I ain't never heard nothing. I've run into black panthers before. I've seen mountain lions. They say they don't exist in Virginia, but they're here. Nothing had ever scared me like that. But I found footprints, probably a quarter mile from my house, half mile from my house. Most of them were grass prints, so you can't get a good cast or anything from that. We did have that one up there in eastern Virginia. It was what, 15 and a half inches? Like 7.5 inches wide. That's not out of the realm of a human. But we had killed rattlesnakes and everything else in that swamp. And I'm an old country boy. I'm about as redneck as you can get. I grew up in the woods. I'm not walking through this swamp. But there was good toe impressions, good heel impressions, whatever. It was one track. It wasn't a series of tracks. It was one track. And I mean, it was clear. It was a good one. But I'll be around the conference. If you guys have any questions for me, just holler at me. Thank y'all.
My name's Sam Deloach from High Knob Bigfoot Group. I've met you before, Cold Corral. Spoke with Bill a time or two on the phone. Unfortunately, I've never had a sighting. I'm real close to Rye Cove, off of Hunters Valley West there, near Devil's Fork. About a month and a half later, we've got a 3-print trackway, which is over there under that table, is one of the castings from it. And my most recent thing is I took a stick and on what we call Squatch Ridge in one of our areas, I just placed it against a tree and videotaped it. And so nobody knew where it was. We come back a month later and there's 5 sticks that were added to it. And you could tell where they were taken off the ground with the dead leaves on it and placed against a tree. And I don't know of any deer, bear, black panthers, anything like that that can stick something against a tree. And the only way you can get onto our property, which is 444 acres, is by one gate. And we have to come off two ridges over there to get to our area. But hopefully one day I'll be lucky enough to see one, you know. But that's what we've got going on right now up there. So, and that's High Knob, Virginia, down Southwest Virginia, down the road.
Thank you.
Well, my name is Cliff Stanley. I live here in Marion. So first I want to welcome everybody to Hungry Mother. I'm a little biased, but I think this is the prettiest state park in the nation. I've enjoyed coming out here, walking a lot. And since that seminal moment in 2001 when I lived in Washington County, and I heard that first vocalization that undoubtedly wasn't anything else, I just finished watching a show called Orangutan Island, and they showed this orangutan male giving a mating call. And it was a cold Friday, November evening. I walked out on my front porch and the door slammed. And that's when I heard the call. It sounded exactly like the mating call I just heard on TV, except one slight difference, which I later figured out, was these wood knocks interspersed in between the whoops. And it, made every cell in my body stand up. Not just every hair, but every cell. And since then, I communicated by email with Bill. He probably doesn't remember, back in 2001. I learned that they're all over the nation. And I've had the big eye shine experiences, and I had one dream that was so real, it was like an out-of-body experience, where I think a female Sasquatch invited me into the woods. But what I want to tell y'all now is just the question I've always had since I became aware of the existence of Bigfoot as an actual species. Forest ape or a forest person. And when I was camping out in National Forest, I went to bed about 11:30, and a half hour later I heard this conversation up in the woods. It was a short, two-sentence conversation. The first sentence was merely a question. Each syllable was clearly inflected like a question, no doubt about it. And it started something like, and it just went on like mumbo jumbo for a short while. And what impressed me and made my hair stand up at that point was how low in frequency or pitch that it was. And the response was even more surprising because it was even lower in pitch or tone than the first sentence. And it sounded a whole lot like the first sentence, and that sounded like mumbo jumbo to me, and it started with the same first two words, muab, only it was clearly an emphatic positive statement. Each syllable was clearly defined in pronunciation to be a positive statement. And so, you know, I have to take that there's some intelligence there. And I appreciate y'all listening. Thank you.
I've been looking for Bigfoot for 5 years, and I found last year that definitely they are here. I was over, I'll just show you this one. First encounter was this rock back 4.5 years ago. It was on top of the mountain, on vocalizations. Tree knocks, my son, I'm the lowest paper, I'm sorry. Hi.
We can hear you.
Sorry. My first experience was a rock being thrown at us from about 35 feet away. It was from down over a bank. It came up through the trees and landed behind our vehicle that we were sitting in. And this is the one. It kicked up a lot of dust is how I knew that was the rock, because there wasn't nobody up there. It was a cold night, and my son had done some looks and knocks. He was the one that ended up finding Bigfoot. I wasn't even into that yet. I got a report from another feller in Blacksburg, Virginia, up to 460. He was a doctor. He said he seen one cross the road. You know, I kind of laughed. I was like, "You're a doctor. You ain't supposed to be telling me this." So I went, met up with him. He showed me where the spot was. It took me a year to find the spot that he actually, that he was actually telling me about. I was in the area about 6 months and actually found 5 prints one day. This is one of them. 13.25 inch track on a march, I think it was the 19th of March. The ground had just started falling. This was in a heavy rock bed that was compressed down by the snowpack, and it just started melting off. And you tell me what a creature will leave such depth, especially in the front end as it's going down a hill like this. So I found 5 of those tracks that day. Within a year and a half, I found 3 different more sizes than this one in the same area, up to 33 in 2.5 years. And what I found out that it was a trackway right off the Appalachian Trail. I'm going to tell you about my last experience, and this one about took me out of the woods. I've got some cards with a picture of what I saw on it. A forensic from 31 years of the FBI, Alex Evans, drew this for me. I gave her a description. It was the face of a Sasquatch at 22 feet away, in between 2 laurel thickets, that far apart. And the whole part of the laurel thicket was black. The width of the shoulders was as wide as the hood on my Jeep. The face on it was just like mine. I mean, that breaks the ice every now and then. You get caught up in Sasquatch research. You're out beating the trees and all that stuff. Don't do it. Don't dress in camo. That's why I really did this, because you dress in camo just like animal. Larry, the animal guy, just told me a while ago. He said, they're going to think of you as a hunter. They're going to avoid you. They don't like hunters. I know that. That's why I dress like this. To show you what not to dress like. Because if you go in the woods, just like the rest of you, you're more than likely going to have an encounter because they're not afraid of you. My last encounter lasted for about 9 seconds, maybe 8. And I treated it just like a bear. I didn't want to get aggressive, and I didn't want to get eaten. But all I seen was from here up, it was hunched over like this and behind a knoll. I don't even know if it was standing up. I haven't been back there since. Nobody. And it was like this. And his eyes were that big around. And to me, the facial features on it looked more human than it did probably. It just had that look in its eyes, like I'm looking at you. You're looking at me. Hey, bro. I mean, that's what I got. But I've got cards. I've got the River Valley Bigfoot organization. I've had it for about 4 years now. And my group has grown, and I've met some great new friends. I've heard some actual great encounters from this event already. I'm looking forward to talking to the rest of them. And check us out on Facebook, Tracy on it. And Billy, it's a great event.
Just maybe some. My name's Gary. I didn't have a personal encounter myself. It took 60 years for me to find out about my dad's encounter. He was about 13 years old at the time. And if you have any older family members, don't be afraid to ask them if they've ever had any strange experiences, because you might not never find out about it. The only reason I did was my dad was watching Unsolved Mysteries program when he was about 67, around 70 years old. So it took, a long time for me to find out that he had had an experience. And we lived in the northeastern part of North Carolina, near the Outer Banks, which Terrell County is the name of the county. It's a large county area-wise, but small in population. He and his brother were out in the field working with the horses plowing the field. Thunder and lightning came up, bad thunderstorm. They go running to the barn. As they run underneath the barn, it's dark under there, they can't see. They turn around and they're looking outside at the storm as it approaches. As the lightning gets closer, they start backing up away from the door area. As they back up a couple of steps, something grunts at them. And they turn around and look, and they're thinking black bear, because there's a lot of black bear in that area. And this thing is a lot taller than any bear in the area. And they just turn around and scream and run to the house. Getting to the house, they tell their dad, what's going on. He says, oh yeah, sure, right, not believing him. So finally, when the rainstorm does stop, they go back outside, but the rain has washed away all the tracks outside of the barn. But as they enter the barn area, there's a couple of good, nice, fresh tracks. About 17 to 18 inches is the way he described it. But I would have never found out about it if I hadn't been visiting and just happened that show came on. So don't hesitate to ask. You might find out that there's some strange encounters in your own family. Appreciate it.
Anyone else? All right. Since Tracy had brought up something that you shouldn't do, and since Bruce is just dying for me to tell this story because it's when I did something wrong. When we were out on the investigation, it was the same property that Tommy talked about earlier with the Black Panther. We were all up near on this property. It was all open field. There's 2 ponds, hill on the other side. And someone claimed that they had seen eye shine on the other side of the pond where the bank is at. So here I am with this nice brand new thermal, and we start walking down that way, and as I've got one of the other guys right behind me looking over my shoulder. I've got the thermal checking the bank around the pond, and we see distinct footsteps where something had walked from the pond into the woods, and they were footsteps. So as we're going down through here. Well, guess what I forgot to do? Pull the picture trigger. I was so excited that we just had something large standing right there and walked into the woods, I didn't even think to pull the trigger, so they'll never let that go.
That's not exactly how I remember it.
I know, it was like this.
Before I came over here. And then you're like, where's the picture? Where's the picture? Did you pull the trigger?
And then it's like,
No, I didn't.
oh no, I did.
We laugh about it, but if you have something like that happen, you don't know how you're going to react to it. I mean, you really don't. It's strange how you'll react.
We had it's kind of a funny story. So we had this investigation up at Dolly Sods, and Garrett, you were there, Adam was there, a couple other folks. And Dolly Sods is in West Virginia. It's Dolly Sods, West Virginia, but it's Monongahela. Yeah, Monongahela State Park. So there had been a sighting up there fairly recently, so we decided to go up there and camp out and check it out. Of course, we go in November, I believe, and I remember very distinctly because I flew in, and one of the team members at the time said, "Oh, don't worry, I know you're flying in. I got a tent, I've got a sleeping bag, just come." So great. I get there, and it's really dark. We're setting up our tent, and like the darkest is the pitch black, night, and it's probably like 40 degrees maybe. I don't know.
It started that way.
It was cold, and so I noticed that where he's pulling the tent out, and it's in a box that's unopened. I'm like, you've ever put this tent together? Because we have to put it together in the dark. He said, "Oh no, I just it's brand new. I got it on sale." So here we are trying to figure out the tent. We're trying to put this tent together, and it's a mesh screen. Now it's like 40 degrees out in November at the top of this mountain, and I said, "This is a summer tent. Did you wonder why you got it on sale?" So I said, "All right, well, great. We're kind of stuck." So that night, there were a couple people. So we were at a camp next to where the campsite that had the sighting, and obviously that site was taken, and we were just sort of trying to define what our strategy was for the night. We're going to do a night investigation, and we camped across. And you talk about these two guys who've never been in the woods before. These two guys, I think they're from Pakistan or something. So they're up there, and they're trying to get a fire going. And I felt really bad for them because it's pretty cold out there, right? It's dark, and they've got a lighter, and they got like 2 big chunks of wood, like this big. And they're trying to I'm like, guys, there's this concept called like tinder and kindling, and the whole process. So it was a hopeless case because they didn't have any of that. So they were like basically in the dark. But anyway, they heard a noise. They heard noise, and they come running over to our campsite. We heard something. So we go over there, where everyone's looking around, and the 2 biggest deer I've ever seen just scared the bejesus out of me. They just snort and they run away. And I think that's one of the cases where I think when you get out in the woods, everyone's eager to have an encounter, to have a sighting. But I think that you have to be really careful, and you have to sort of, and I'm, Billy admitted, you're gonna get the pictures. I've been in that position too. I've been really excited, thought, this is it, this is my sighting encounter. And, you forget to do some things. So it's really important when you get out there to keep a cool head and remember, to do things in the order that they should be done. So there's a process for collecting data, and not to get too carried away, because it's very easy to make mistakes. And that one chance you might have had to get a picture or collect a sample, or even just to have a sighting encounter, you blow it. That could be like a once in a lifetime thing. So, and we all think like we know what we're going to do. Oh, I know. If I see that Sasquatch, I'm going to go right up to him and wing him on the arm. No, you don't really know what you're going to do.
Yeah.
Right? You don't. When you're out there in the dark, it's funny because you know, I talk to people sometimes, like in the office, and they're like, they're so fearless in the office next to the water cooler. Ah, you guys, you're afraid of the dark. Well, come on, there's nothing out there. But trust me, you get these same people out there in the dark, miles away from civilization, and it's a totally, totally different story. We've been out numerous times in the woods, and you know, far away from any human beings. And it gets, you can't let your mind get the better of you. You know, you can kind of creep yourself out there because, especially if you don't have a campfire going, you're just out there, you're just sort of listening for sounds. Your mind can play tricks on you. So it's really, really important just to kind of keep that presence of mind when you're out there, and you know, make it safe. You know, we at Creature Weekend we've had a couple of different workshops on how to collect evidence, but we always stress safety when you go out there. So I think that's, if you come away with anything from your experiences here, it's, you know, we want to solve the mystery, but we want to do it safely. You know.
Thank you, Bruce.
About 7 times. We found tracks about a mile from our house. I have a German Shepherd that loves to play with rocks. I got up one morning and I had 2 rocks laying on my front porch. And I would have thought my dog, then, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was feeding my horse and cleaning out my round pen. There was a rock landing in the middle of my round pen. Nobody there, nobody around. You know, but like I said, we've heard him. A couple of weeks ago, he was answered 3 times. 2 was like a woman screaming, and 1 was just a big yell. You know, they're there somewhere, or something is anyway.
Thank you. A investigation, if anyone's ever heard of Paris, Texas. Yeah, Lake Mays, I think they call it. Anyway, there's a lot of, I'm sure as you know, there's a lot of military undetonated duds, if you want to call it. It's planted everywhere. So before they'll even let you walk on some of the property down there, you actually have to take a class where they show you all the different things that you could find and you stay away from it. You know, you don't step near it, don't pick it up, because apparently every now and then, boom, you know, it happens all the time. So anyway, I'm already kind of like, oh, do I really want to go out here? So we go to do this investigation. And first thing that happened was we were there one night and we were using parabolic microphones. And me and the other researcher was set up on a hill. We knew where everyone was at. We had a ravine right in front of us, probably I'd say about 30 yards away from us. We were sitting in a tree line near an open field. And we had 2 parabolic mics, one point in one direction, one point in another. We had other people stationed behind us. And there kept being reports of stuff going on over the radio. People kept claiming they were hearing something. And before long, me and the other researchers started picking up something on our microphones. So as we're listening to it, we're hearing like, it sounded like someone that was completely out of breath. Like someone was running and would stop and it would be like, just sound like they were out of breath. And then it would move and we'd hear it louder. And he heard it on his microphone first. And then as it moved, I could hear it on my microphone. So we knew there was something down there. So we called the crew out and everybody advanced down into the ravine. And, you know, of course we were hoping that whatever it was, we would be able to kind of come in and trap it. Well, that didn't happen. So we went down. No one saw nothing. I mean, it was obviously something there. No one ever saw a thing when they went into the woods. And we've had that happen several times. You know, you'll hear something and you go and there's nothing there. But at that same place, and I've told this story probably about 2 or 3 times. If you've ever listened to the radio show, Sasquatch Watch Radio, I think I've said it once. But while we were there on the last night, me and Tom we had this huge tent, had a really big tent, it was even bigger than the Taj Mahal. Had a separated area, so there was like a bedroom on one side and a bedroom on the other side. I had a cot laying along the side of the tent, and Tom had this huge, like, queen-size air mattress in the back. Okay? So, you know, every time he moves in that thing, it's like, you know, just makes all types of noise. So we're laying there, and it was sometime in the middle of the night. The best way to explain this, because I thought that I was having a dream to where something had come through the fabric of the tent and grabbed my right knee, right above my right knee, and had a hold of my knee and was squeezing my knee. And in the dream, which I thought was a dream, I grab it with my hand. My hand won't fit all the way around the limb, so I grab it with the second, and then I go to pull it off. Okay, and this whole time I'm thinking this is a dream. Okay, so when I wake up the next morning, and I get up, you know, and I get up and I got my shorts and I'm looking and I've got a big red mark right above my knee. So I'm like, you know, I couldn't figure out what's going on. So I hear Tom back there stirring around in his bed, and first thing he don't even say good morning or nothing. He goes, "You ain't not going to believe what happened." And I'm like, "What?" He goes, "I got woke up last night." He said, "I saw this big shadow come across," because it was a real bright moon that night. He claimed he saw a shadow that was towering over the top of the tent. And he said he listened to it walk over to the tent. He said it grabbed the tent pole that was right there by his little window that he had and just violently shook the side of the tent. And he said then he heard it move up toward the front part of the tent where I was at. And he said I'm a really bad snorer. I've got severe sleep apnea. So I'm snoring, and he said whatever was outside the tent was imitating the snore that I was doing. So he would hear me, and then outside he'd hear the same thing. And he said this went on for like 5 minutes. And then he said, and he wouldn't move because he knew his bed was noisy. So he knew if he moved, it was going to hear him. So he said he just sat back there, frozen in fear, didn't even want to move. So again, I wake, you know, when he tells me the story, of course, now I automatically, the hair stand up, you know, back of my neck, because I'm now realizing, okay, maybe this wasn't a nightmare. Now, obviously, I had a mark on my leg, and then I remembered all that, which I thought was a dream. So I don't know. All I know is Bigfoot might have grabbed my leg. I don't know. But the funny thing is him and I, after we had the discussion, all the other guys that was there, we didn't say a word. We just packed our stuff up, loaded it in the truck, didn't say a word to nobody, and took off down the road. It was funny because as we were driving up the road, it was like 2 hours before we even spoke to each other again. Because I think we were just sitting there trying to think about what had actually happened. Yeah, that's one of those funny stories. Who knows? So, all right, I told one of mine. Somebody else's turn.
I'm sure I've seen something or other, but I'm into several podcasts, like, I guess about like spiritualism and like basically, like several people mention dreams, and I'm more interested in maybe like the occult aspects, so I'm kind of probably the oddball in the room. But what interests me is, so I had this stupid idea. Like I say, I was listening to this podcast, and it was talking about basically exchanging food either in real life or in a dream with like the spirit world, right? And this guy who was being interviewed on this podcast, he mentioned Bigfoot, and I didn't think much of it, or if anything, I laughed. So I got this silly idea. I put out food by our tree, which in retrospect I wouldn't do again, and you know, they say don't feed wild animals or what have you. So I put this food out. It was something I had made from scratch. It was, what was it? It was cornbread with honey on it. I'm sorry, I'm nervous. Cornbread with honey on it. a shot of orange moonshine and something else. But I was thinking of it in the context of like this is spiritual, like it's the thought that counts. So I didn't actually put the moonshine out there. I just kind of like had it and I was like, this is for spirits, and I like threw it out on the tree. And then the bread I did leave. And then I think I also put a glass of water. And maybe my wife will correct me if I get some of this context out of line. So that was over, and I didn't really expect anything else to happen. So I went to sleep, and I woke up the next morning, and Suzanne was like, you're not going to believe this. She was like, basically, I had a dream that Bigfoot came. And I was like, that's so weird, because she didn't know I had put that food out. So, you know, you figure, like I didn't mention Bigfoot, and I just thought it was weird that the podcast had mentioned it, and then she had mentioned him. So then she'd been thinking about Bigfoot, and then she was the one that found this conference. But the weird part was, so we were out, I think it was either one day or 2 days after, and we were watching the Pleiades meteor shower, which was really cool, and that went on for several days. So we're watching the Pleiades, and we have 2 dogs, and the dogs kind of react to, like the dogs, I think, keep anything from coming around our house. Like there is a bear, and you can tell it's a bear because it's about this high and this wide, and it's dark black, and it walks on all 4 like a bear. So we do have a bear that comes around the trash, which makes me think in retrospect it was stupid to put the food out because I don't really want to track the bear, that's no good. So we're watching the Pleiades, or I was, like Suzanne and I did it the first day, and the second day I just did it because she was at work. And my dogs went in the front yard, and I didn't want to bother my neighbor, so I didn't holler for them to come back. I just went to like corral them and get them back to the house. And when I did, I stepped on this bird, and it was like a half-eaten bird, like freshly half-eaten. And I've never seen anything like that before or since. And it really spooked me, because I got the impression that it was like an exchange. Like you give me food, I give you food. And it really like scared me. And I called my wife all crazy, like, you're not gonna believe what happened. I found this dead bird. And I took a picture of it and everything, and I'm not even sure what kind of bird it is. Like, I think whatever was ate the head, but it was like, it was freshly killed. And I just like I know this sounds crazy, but like, I just got the impression, like, you gave me food, I give you food. And then we have had like the neighbors have come out, and they'll like shine the flashlight all around, and they'll even shine a flashlight on their roof. So we get the impression that the neighbors are kind of spooked. And I have talked to the neighbors about like bears, like in the general area. And like, I have this like vague memory of like there being like a scraggly bear, like not the size of Bigfoot by any means, but I remember like that we did see something, but we thought it was a bear. And since then, I have seen a bear, and it didn't really look the same. But at the time, I really wasn't thinking Bigfoot. But Suzanne has had like a lot of dreams. I just think that's really interesting.
We've seen something that's scraggly, that's the size of a bear, that has walked on 2 legs probably more than a bear should.
Right, like in the context of this whole Bigfoot gathering, you know, maybe that's what it was, but we've also seen a bear, and that seemed like 2 different things.
And then if you shine a light towards it, it like tries to avoid the light, which I don't know if a bear would do that.
I guess a bear would do that. So I don't know, I'm just interested in kind of like I'm going to be the oddball in the group and say that I'm interested in the paranormal aspect of it. I think that's interesting. And I'm also interested in like the mythological aspect. So that's why we're here.
We've also had like, I was leaving for work one day, and I had, it was either a rock or like an acorn thrown at me when I walked out of my house. And I remember being like, wow, that squirrel can throw really hard.
We had a thump on the roof, and then we figured, well, like it was like a branch falling, but then we never did find a branch on the
That
house.
was weird. And then something was in our basement, which is like a crawl space, and we had the door open, but I heard something in there walking around, and the light ended up being on when I looked outside. It could have been a person, but we live kind of back in the
But the
woods.
short version is I like camping and stuff, and
I'm not going
now after doing this, like I'm never going to convince Suzanne to go camping ever. But thanks for listening to my crazy
been some great debates, right? Tarzan, Flash Gordon, Batman, Superman. Tastes great, less film. But one of the great debates that seems to permeate, Bigfoot research is this creature flesh and blood, or is it spiritual paranormal? And I will tell you that I've argued with a lot of people about this, and there's no consensus on that. There's, I think, Frank Bennett's written a book on spiritual Bigfoot. There are a lot of people who believe that Bigfoot is paranormal, and that's why the evidence is so scant about its existence. I mean, basically, and we have sure there are a lot of, blob squatches out there, a lot of tracks, but aside from the, Patterson-Gimlin film, which was shot back in 1967, the evidence is really circumstantial. So what you're talking about is totally, contemporary with, Bigfoot research. Is it flesh and blood? Is it paranormal? Is it spiritual? Can it travel interdimensionally? Who knows? Yeah,
And you've gotten several, haven't you gotten several sighting reports of several different colors, like white, silver, red, creature sightings? Yeah.
Well, the one I saw was like a dark brown reddish, but it did have some discoloration in the back, a gray, sort of aging spots. I have had a sighting report that had a white creature. Another one chestnut colored. Almost, they described it as like cardboard box color, something like that. But that's sort of the variations that we have.
What's your theory of the color? Do you think it's just a gray and white or older, or do you think it's just?
The one that we saw, we saw it from the side originally, and then it turned and took a left turn, and we saw the back. The back looks similar to primate graying also, because I started researching about primates and how they change as they get older. So that's what it looked like to me. It was just spotty areas, things like that. Otherwise, the other ones I've seen are with more black color, solid black. The one at night, I saw with the night vision, so I couldn't really tell. But others were pretty much just the white one. That was actually near Roundley, West Virginia. There was another white one in Southern Virginia, and then the chestnut color, that was near Lake Chesden, near Petersburg, Virginia. So, but most of the time they're like a reddish, dark, and then reddish color too. So I'm not sure. I don't even want to venture why they're different colors.
I see 3 black ones and 2 reddish colored ones. A lot of people describe it as being cinnamon colored, but when I look at a spice rack, I say it looks like a nutmeg color. But the red ones the 2 red ones were bigger than the black ones. And I don't know if this is a male thing.
Buffalo. There's even a white squirrel back there on the wall, and apparently that bald eagle doesn't see it, even though it's pure white. But in all seriousness, so in the wild, animals that are born with albinism, they generally don't live very long because they stick out. And so the predators, get them very easily. But I think if you look at the different types of like Sasquatch hair colors, I know upstate New York, there was a rash of Sasquatch sightings that were reddish colored. In Ohio, there was a white Sasquatch sighting. I spoke with a gentleman just 3 weeks ago who had a white Sasquatch sighting in Pennsylvania, somewhere north of, I think it was near Marionville. So every now and then I think that albinism does pop up, but it is considered anomalous. This is just a total guess, but I think that if there is any color associated with a certain region, it's because the population there has the genetic makeup to produce that color. So if those animals sort of breed and stay in that area, for example, like, if you take human beings, like Sweden, right? The majority of people tend to be blonde and blue-eyed. you know, not because of the natural environment, just because that's where the genetic pool is for blonde, blue-eyed people. So, you know, that's changing more, that, you know, we become more of a global village. But I think the same would hold true with species of animals that sort of stay in there. They don't migrate, you know, that much. If you may get a rogue male, a sub-adult, that gets kicked out and has to find its own territory or something, that's when you see that genetic pool change a little bit. But even if you look at like the wolves in Yellowstone, you know, there are, you know, wolves generally tend to be like a grayish color or a brownish color, but you've got black wolves, and they actually, and white wolves, and they've actually been tracking them and found that, you know, and tracked their mating habits and discovered that these wolves actually travel from pack to pack, and
first time I seen the two creatures up there. Later on, I found myself in Spotsylvania County, and I seen an all-white one. So, and those are the three different colors that I've seen. You know, I know they're coming. I've heard other colors, you know, kind of like yellow. You know, but I'm not the only one in my family that's seen it. My son has seen it. My daughter has seen it. That was a pretty scary encounter for her. She does not want to see it again. When I took her back to the area in the daytime, and it was very hard to get it back there. We measured where the eyes were, and I had to, and lucky I did bring a ladder. I did bring a ladder, and I got up as high as I could, and then I had to bring a shovel, and, you know, as best as I could, the eyes were about 11.5 feet in the air, you know. So she described it as massive, and when she first saw it, she got down on her hands and knees and started crawling away, like begging for mercy. So, and I let her know that everything's okay, nothing is attacking us, but she just wanted to get out of there. And so she described, I had her draw it, and I recorded her talking about the sighting, and she does not want to talk about it again. But she did describe it as huge, very muscular, and it was standing like this, you know. So that's what started.
Where I'm from, it's everybody's mountain people. Billy knows what I'm talking about. Nobody wants to talk about something like that when they've seen it. Mr. Lodes, you know what I'm talking about. Nobody wants to talk about it. It's embarrassing. You're scared of it. Don't say nothing about it. People will make fun of it. They will laugh at you. My heritage is, I'm Shawnee, Cherokee, and Scottish. My family has a long tradition of Native Americans, and I do a lot of Native American stuff. One thing that everybody asks me is, what makes you think it's real? Every native tribe in the United States has a name for it. Okay? Indians didn't name anything that wasn't real. Okay? They have stories like the Sioux Indians talk of their god, Wonkin Tonkin, and he looks like a buffalo because he gave the Sioux Indians the Tutunka, which is a buffalo. It was part of his body he gave them to eat. So even when they do speak of something that's supernatural, it always has a base in nature. They didn't name anything that wasn't here. So why would every tribe in the U.S. name it if every tribe in the U.S. didn't see it? And it's not just the United States. You go to Vietnam. They're there. My ex-wife's dad talked about when he was in Vietnam that some of his people were attacked by rock apes. That's what he told me, rock apes. I said, what'd they look like? They're hairy. That's all he would say. Hairy. And they actually ended up hurting one of the boys that was in his unit pretty bad. They was rolling rocks off the hill. But that's common, you know. They talk about stuff like that all the time. Every continent on the United States, or every continent in the world has a site of a giant, hairy, bipedal mammal. Okay? It's there, and people are going to say, oh, you're crazy, that's not real. okay, if everybody in the world's talking about it, and everybody in the world is seeing it, I don't think it's mass hysteria. I don't think it's TV hype. It's here. Don't be embarrassed. I mean, I know there's a lot of people in here that haven't said anything yet or whatever. And if you're embarrassed, don't be. I mean, I'm not scared to get up and tell what I saw. It's there. I've seen it. I've seen its footprints. I've seen it push stuff over. I've seen people get so excited that, you know, they can't think straight. I have about, I'm 100% straight up, I've about shit my pants at times. I mean, I have been scared. You know, I did time in the Marines. You know, I thought I was pretty tough while I've been out on some of these expeditions. And there has been times, it's been rough, dude. I mean, it has been rough. It takes a lot to rattle me. And I've been rattled a lot doing this stuff. Because there's just things that you can't say, you know, there's things you can say. That's natural. You can look at it and say, this is what happened. This is the tree that fell, that knocked this over, that done this. And then there's things you can see that are not natural that you cannot explain. So, I mean, it's there. Don't be embarrassed by it. You know, kind of embrace it. You've seen something, heard something, you know, experienced something that most people in the U.S. will not. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Right? I get woken up at like 3 in the morning because one of our group members, he's got a tent, but it's not waterproof. So he put a tarp over it. So the tarp is tightened down with ropes. But the wind is whipping through and it's rattling the whole night. And that was the first time I put my hand on my knife because I was going to cut those ropes loose and let that tarp fly clear to Tennessee. But that night we had, it was, I don't think I ever told you this. So it was snowing. So I was sleeping there and the snow was coming through the mesh of the tent. And I'm like, this can't get any worse. But the great thing is, you know, I was up and I did a little walk because it was like 3 in the morning, whatever. I couldn't sleep, so I did a little walk. And it's funny how, you know, at 3 a.m. how quiet things are, and you know, you just don't think that things are moving around when they are. You know, I saw a lot of deer just walking around. There's that road up to the campsite, right? It's a lot of deer walking around the road. But these are things that you normally don't see in broad daylight. So I guess the point of the story is that I think, you know, we always ask ourselves, like, you know, if these creatures exist, why aren't there more photographs? Why don't we have more evidence? And a lot of it is because I think these creatures are very intelligent, and they probably choose a time to walk around when people aren't, right? So one of the best sightings we've ever had was Walter Tippy sighting. Well, that happened at 4 a.m. Do you know something? Do you want to talk about it?
I don't know the story as good as you do.
Well, all right. So this happened up in Ohio. This gentleman that we know, his name is Walter Tippy. He had a very significant sighting up at Salt Fork State Park. He was the day before there was a fishing tournament at the lake, and some of the fishermen reported seeing a creature on the banks of the lake there in the middle of the park. So Walter and 2 of his colleagues decided they're going to go and do an investigation in that area. And there's a trail that leads down there. So they were going to meet at like 4 in the morning, 4 a.m. on this trail. So the way he tells it is that he got there a little bit late. And he's walking down the trail. And it's very dark, but you can make out kind of shapes. So he sees 2 figures there that he says, oh, those are my colleagues. So he tries to get their attention, starts waving his arms. He picks up a stick and bangs on a tree to get their attention. Hey, I'm here. And he said that he heard them talking, but he couldn't make out the words. So he just assumed that they were his friends. But they weren't acknowledging him at all. And he started to walk toward them, and as he was walking toward them, they started walking away from him. And as he got closer, he realized that these creatures were really tall, that they weren't human. And I forget, he said they must have been 7 or 8 feet tall. And he was trying to catch up to them, but he never could catch up to them. And so where they were at the crest of the hill. By the time he got up to the hill, they had gone down the other part of the hill, still on the trail. And as he crested the hill, he looked down, and one of them was going into the woods and it stopped just long enough to look back at him. He did snap a picture of it, but unfortunately, it's just another one of those blob squatches that we see all the time on the internet. But the interesting thing about that is that he actually heard them communicating verbally. And that's kind of a rare thing. We, at Preacher Weekend last year, we had Ron Moorhead, who recorded the Sierra Sounds in the Sierra Nevadas. And, you know, he has a colleague who we also know, Scott Nelson, who's a cryptolinguist for the Navy. And his job was to decipher codes. And he believes that based on the Sierra Sounds that Ron Moorhead recorded, he believes they actually do have a language. So, you know, and that was just recently. Walter Tippy's sighting was probably only like, what, three years ago maybe? 2 or 3 years ago. And it happened during, you know, I think it was May.
I took a report one time from a guy that lived between Saltville and Chihuahua. And he said that his family land was so poor that they couldn't farm it, so his daddy made moonshine to support the family. He said that the wood boogers used to get into his daddy's mash barrels. And the boys asked his daddy, aren't you going to do something about that, Dad? And his dad says, oh, they do it every now and then.